Bruce DuMont back with hour number 2 of Beyond the Beltway. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Again, we've heard from the professors. We're now going to hear from the talk show hosts, and we're going to be joined in this hour by Kenny Rehmeyer of KLBJ in Austin, Texas. We're having a little problem connecting with Kenny, but again, we're working on it. And Eric Cohen, who is here as a guest frequently on this program, and also an afternoon talk show on Sundays on WIND. One of our flagship stations in Chicago. And Jim Leach. Jim Leach is with WMAY in Springfield, Illinois, which is one of our affiliates. So they've carried this program for a long, long time. And Jim goes back a long, long time in covering the Springfield market. Gentlemen, thank you all for being with us tonight on Beyond the Beltway.
Great to be here, Bruce.
Jim, let me start with you, because one of the things that you said you wanted to talk about is that a lot of people who voted for Donald Trump are not they don't believe what happened, and a lot of them are suggesting, let's hell no, we're not going to just step aside. And you're worried that the president is either listening to them too much, or maybe riling them up and urging them to maybe act irresponsibly. Is that a fair assessment of your concern?
Yeah, I think anybody would be rightly concerned when the President of the United States is taking meetings in the Oval Office with people who have openly called for martial law to overturn the results of a lawful election. Mm-hmm. These are not normal times in which we live, but that's a bridge too far, I think, by any measure.
Eric Cohen, do you agree?
Yeah, it's deeply concerning. And the people who are surrounding Trump, I mean, let's assume he came into the White House with the A-team he could possibly get. Mm-hmm. All the turnover that he's had means now we've got essentially the D team at best advising him. And the fact that he would listen to people who are suggesting anything like martial law is somewhat ludicrous. Mm-hmm. And I think we should separate that out, though, from, I think there are a dedicated group of supporters who do believe all the stuff about the election being stolen. Mm-hmm. And I think that there is a larger group, though, that we should remember that they're probably looking at this as, yeah, some things seemed weird. I wonder how many points Alabama's going to beat Notre Dame by in the college football.
Kenny Rehmeyer, you are from KLBJ in Texas, which is obviously the most, even though it's the most liberal city in Texas, it is probably the most conservative state in which this program is carried. So my question to you is, how much time is spent with callers to your station, not just to your show, but people who are the true believers that just do not believe that Donald Trump should get out of the way on January 20th? Kenny, are you there? He is not there for some reason. We're trying to...
Yes, Bruce.
Yeah, go ahead, Kenny. Hello? Go ahead, Kenny.
Well, Bruce, thanks. Certainly a lot of callers to our radio station, Bruce, have very much expressed an interest in hanging with the president, very much support him doing whatever he can do to play out his legal options.
And to what extent, I mean, when Jim talks about martial law, I mean, how serious is that? How much, Jim Leach, let me go back to you. How serious do you think the people are that are suggesting that to the president?
Well, I think suggesting it at all is a pretty serious matter. I mean, we have elections, we have processes for this. We've had the vote, we've had it certified. The Electoral College has cast its ballots. This election's over. There shouldn't be even a second of thought or discussion being given to martial law, to any further legal challenges. There's been no evidence of voter fraud that would overturn the outcome of this election. It's over, and it's time for Donald Trump to grow up, man up, accept his loss, and let's move on with the next administration.
What do you think he will be doing on January 20th at noon, Eric Cohen? We asked this in the last hour of our program. What do you think he's going to be doing?
If I had to bet on it, I think it's a slightly better than 50-50 chance that he decides to skip the inauguration. It just wouldn't surprise me if he did that. I want to think the best, and that he would just recognize that he should be there, that we have had a peaceful transition of power between every administration that we've had in the history of this country, and that he should play a part in all of that. But I want to make a quick note on something that Kenny said, that the callers who are saying that they need an opportunity for the legal challenges he wants to make to this to play out, they have. And people just need to start accepting this reality. And the cases that have been brought that haven't been laughed out of courts, where the relief that they were asking for to overturn the election was not completely ridiculous, the ones where they did find for him was never going to be enough to overturn the elections. And that we're still hearing people talk about the legal process, It is over, and people need to start accepting this.
Kenny, where do you think you'll be on January 20th at noontime?
I doubt that he's going to be in attendance at the inauguration. Let me just say, in defense of our callers and a position that I've taken on why the president continues to pursue this. I come from a sales background, certainly before I got into radio. Trump is a sales guy. You read his book, The Art of the Deal. He talks about maximizing options, using your leverage, and fighting back. A good sales guy never gives up. I'm not defending certainly the talk of martial law and some of this nonsense, but I'm just saying the guy is trying to play it out. He's working the phones. My understanding is, I think Politico had an article, he's talked to 31 Republicans trying to see if they'll, on the floor of the House and the Senate, try to give him some opportunity that way. So a good sales guy never gives up. Trump is not giving up, as annoying as that is to most people.
But the outcome of the presidential election is not a deal to be negotiated. It's the decision of the American people, and they've made their decision. There's no deal to be made here.
Yeah, let's be very clear about what he is trying to do and what he has been trying to do. He has been trying to steal the election by accusing the Democrats of having stolen the election. And Jim is absolutely right. This is not something that is to be negotiated in this way. And at some point, we want the president of the United States to act like the president of the United States should.
When you talk about legal responsibility, do you believe that after the election, after when Joe Biden is sworn in, do you think there's going to be any appetite by anyone, either the Republicans, certainly not the Democrats? Is there going to be an appetite into continuing to look at some of these allegations that have been made, which, according to some people, there wasn't enough time to put together, a court case on it. I disagree with that. But, there's going to be a lot of time between now and, 2022 where maybe Republicans feel that there's a case to be made to a broader group of Republicans and the general public. I'll ask you that, Kenny.
I absolutely think there should be some investigation into so many of the irregularities and some of the issues that we've heard from state to state, whether they're enough to turn this thing around for President Trump at this stage of the game. I would hope that everyone would certainly be interested in the integrity of the vote and getting the system right at the state level across the board. I certainly hope that that's going to continue, whether that's in the Senate or whatever body can pursue that with results.
10 seconds to you, Jim Leach. Do you think that's a good idea, or should we just nail this thing shut?
If we're going to look at elections in every state, not just the swing states that went to Joe Biden, sure, let's take a look. But that's not what this is about. This is about trying to overturn the states that went to Biden.
Okay, gentlemen, we've got to pause. I'm Bruce DuMont. Thanks for joining us. Last broadcast of 2020. The long year. Glad it's over. Back shortly with more conversation. Bruce DuMont back on Beyond the Beltway, our last broadcast of the year. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. We're talking about, Donald Trump is a disruptor, and our guests have suggested, including in the first hour, some have suggested that he will continue to disrupt until the very constitutional end of his administration. But frequently in the last week of presidential, not campaigns, but administrations, the president many presidents make a lot of news by offering a pardon to someone. Now, Donald Trump has already pardoned several people of a high publicity value. But Eric Cohn, as you look at the long list of potential people that he could pardon, who are the ones that might make the biggest news?
one I'm looking for, and I think a lot of people are looking for to see if he will offer a pardon to, is Edward Snowden. This one that's been floated, there have been rumors that have circulated that he may pardon Julian Assange. There's going to be a lot of divided opinion on this if that is an action that he actually takes. Where I come down on that personally is I think Snowden would be deserving of a pardon in this case. I am appreciative, while also understanding of the concerns people raised about the information that he helped release. It helped shed light on illegal things that the government was doing, and helped put an end to some of those programs, and focused a lot more attention that wasn't focused on illegal surveillance that the government was operating after 9/11. So that's the one that I'm looking for, and I think the most interesting.
Do you think that Assange could be a lesser of a less impact, but also important? I mean, I don't think he would pardon both, but I guess nothing would surprise me that he would do. But it would seem to me that Julian Assange, because he, is a journalist or purports to be a journalist, I think he's a journalist. He may have more protective cover than someone who worked in national security and blew the whistle on what he saw.
I think the opposite is true. I think it is far more clear that Julian Assange has been a cutout of the Russian government, and has been for a long time, which I don't think was the case. The fact that Edward Snowden ended up there was because he basically got stranded there when the State Department would no longer let Snowden travel. So I think it actually would be people who would be opposed to the Snowden pardon would have a better case talking about Julian Assange than they would Snowden.
Okay. Kenny Rehmeyer, how many people in your listenership would support either of these pardons?
I'm not sure, Bruce, if anybody would support those. I think to go back to your original question, I guess on who might make news, if he were to pardon any of his family members preemptively for any reason, those would certainly be lightning rods.
What about you, Jim? Anybody deserve a pardon out there?
I think anybody who's going to try to predict what Donald Trump will do is deluding themselves, but I'm going to go ahead and try anyway, and suggest that I think he actually won't try to preemptively pardon family members. And the reason is because it's certainly been discussed in legal circles that once you've received a pardon, you're no longer under Fifth Amendment protections. You can't incriminate yourself anymore for a crime for which you cannot be prosecuted. If there's anybody out there with any potential testimony in future court cases involving Donald Trump, I think he'd probably like to have that layer of protection there. So I'm guessing he won't go that far, but again, that's just a guess.
What about Snowden and or Assange?
I think Snowden's a real possibility. I think Eric makes a great point about that. Ultimately, I think Donald Trump's decisions here are going to be governed mostly by what he thinks might benefit his future political and or media ambitions. And Snowden, I think, probably fits that bill more than some of the other names that have been talked about.
When you look at the last 4 years, Kenny, I'm going to start with you. This administration began by many people suggesting that Donald Trump was too close to Vladimir Putin and was a puppet of the Russians, and then you had 4 years of investigation into that. When you look back on everything that's happened, do you think there's a case to be made that Donald Trump did roll over and play favorites for the Russians throughout the whole 4 years?
Well, there's probably two paths you could go down, Bruce. Certainly, in some respects, he has done some things against Russia, and he's said many times, I've been tougher on Russia than anybody else. I'll come back to a premise in the first segment about him being a sales guy and a businessman. He tried for years to get some business dealings going there in Russia. They didn't really come to fruition. I would suggest if he was trying to hold back or dial it back in any way, shape, or form, it was in the back of his mind he'd like to do more business in Russia post-Trump presidency.
Eric, what do you think about that?
I think with many things in the Trump administration, it has been a decidedly mixed bag. Some of the policy sanction moves he's made on the Russians, the way he's treated them from a policy perspective, have been fairly tough and don't comport with the idea that he was going to be some kind of an agent of Moscow as president of the United States. However, Donald Trump clearly has an infatuation with strongmen types, for people like Putin, for people like Erdogan. So the kind of thing that you would hope from the president, to speak with a sense of moral clarity about who these people are, the kind of things that they do, you never got that from Trump. And you got the kind of, well, you know, the United States kills people too, which is just really, really terrible moral equivocation to me.
Jim Leach, your reaction on the Russia, and I'll throw in the reaction to the Chinese. I mean, you know, supposedly now everybody's thinking that maybe there's a special relationship between the Chinese and Joe Biden.
Well, let's start with Russia. I mean, I think it's been disastrous when Donald Trump time and again has sided with Vladimir Putin over our own intelligence community. He's doing it again this week when we've got the massive hacking of federal agencies. William Barr, Mike Pompeo are all saying it's the Russians, and Donald Trump saying, oh, maybe it's not the Russians, just like he did about election interference 4 years ago. I think that's a disastrous message to send to the world, to send to other strongmen types. And against the backdrop of the Mueller report that concluded that the Trump campaign knew about Russian interference and welcomed the assistance they got from it. If Donald Trump is not a Russian asset, I don't know how you distinguish between him and somebody who actually was a Russian asset in the way he's treated and deferred to Putin on every level. As for China, I mean, we'll see what happens with Joe Biden when he gets into office here. But I'm frankly much more concerned at this point about a president who is deliberately downplaying the ongoing espionage and cyber hacking of the Russian government into our federal government, and seems not to be the slightest bit interested in it.
Do you agree with that, Eric?
I mean, yes and no. I think we should be more concerned about China than Jim might have been suggesting there. And I think part of the problem, the way that we've talked about all of this, is that it has been in these personal relationship capacities of, like, what is Joe Biden and his family's personal relationship with China? What is Donald Trump's personal interest in Russia? Look, that's not to say we shouldn't be concerned about these things, but we should be concerned about, on a serious scale, about China's position in the world, their desire to be a regional hegemon, what they are doing in Hong Kong. We had an opportunity in the past week or so to offer refugee status to people from Hong Kong, which was blocked by Senator Ted Cruz, which is something that I just find absolutely disgusting. They're the kind of people who we should be welcoming into this country and giving refuge to. So as with so many things in the Trump years, we're distracted from what the more important things are by the personal Kardashian-like television drama of this presidency. I don't think we've been well served by that.
Kenny, earlier in the year, we had a discussion on Beyond the Beltway, and that was when many people were thinking that Texas would turn blue. It did not turn blue, but as you look ahead to 2024, what is happening in the state of Texas, and where are the politics and the demographics going? Certainly, one of the ones that flew in the face of that possibility was some of your most Democratic Hispanic counties overwhelmingly supported, Donald Trump, or at least to a large degree, if not in a majoritarian way. Kenny, are you there? Well, okay, we have problems with. We're going to see if we can work it out. What's happening with
Bruce? I just
go ahead, Kenny. Are you there?
Well, I apologize. I just rejoined and I didn't hear your question too.
My question is: earlier this year, we talked about Texas going blue. It didn't go blue, but as we look to 2024, are there signals on the ground there that suggest that Texas is someday in the not too distant future going to switch to the blue column? Yeah,
Bruce, again, I apologize.
Okay.
I didn't hear a lot of your question. I don't see Texas turning blue anytime soon. President won the state by 5.6%.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people speculated about that, the Beto O'Rourke's to the world and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
There was a very strong showing across the board in the state legislative races and so forth on the Republican
Mm-hmm.
side. I don't see turning blue anytime soon.
Okay. Kenny, we're having problems with our technology communication to you, so I'm going to say farewell to you at this particular moment, but thanks for being with us. I'm Bruce DuMont, back shortly. Bruce DuMont back. Thanks very much for joining us. I'm going to go back to bring everybody in. I understand we're trying to reconnect with Kenny Reimeyer, but again, I want to start with you, Jim Leach. The two huge stories of this year, and there were many that vie for that, but certainly the outbreak of COVID-19 was the devastating story of the year, and then there was the shooting of George Floyd in May up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. As you look at, let's focus first on COVID-19. Do you think we're at the point where we're turning the corner, and were you surprised by anything the way the public reacted to this tragedy?
Well, my go-to is to always kind of return back to Donald Trump and his role in this. I mean, this it was a major national crisis.
Yeah, I'm hearing everything.
Go ahead.
Unfortunately, I just don't feel like we got that. I feel like we could have been in a much different place right now had we had a president who was really setting a tone that said, wear masks, take this seriously, social distance, avoid those large gatherings. And we usually got just the opposite from President Trump. In some respects, I suppose it's good. What
about cutting off travel to China relatively quickly, cutting off travel to Spain and England? Which many of those that surrounded him in the medical community opposed. Doesn't he get some credit for reacting in a rather quick way?
Sure, and he's mentioned that over and over and over again.
Well, but
the travel ban was limited. I mean, there were still a lot of people coming into this country from China and from other countries. They're coming in from Europe, and a lot of our early cases.
But he did it.
Well, of course he did, but he could have done a whole lot more. He is the president of the United States.
What more could he have done, in your view?
Again, I think you set a tone through leadership. I think you set a tone that says, wear your mask, as opposed to Donald Trump refusing to wear a mask. You set a tone that says, we're going to have to hunker down for a while, as opposed to we want to be opened up by Easter.
But Jim, I think
it would be a different outcome.
But today. Jim, if we have been told repeatedly that we're supposed to follow the science in this matter, Dr. Fauci, he didn't like the idea of shutting down the flights from China. He initially said, as well as Dr. Birx, they both said, masks weren't that important. I mean, they sent all kinds of mixed signals, and these were his experts. These were the people that he was supposed to be listening to. And so my question to you is, how much of the blame really goes back to Donald Trump? Now, granted, he did not give serious measure to wearing masks, and half the country agrees with him and half the country disagrees with him. But again, to say that he did nothing, Eric, I want to have you weigh in as well. I mean, you're a critic of the president's, but again, to say that he did nothing, I don't think is an accurate assessment of what was going on.
He didn't do nothing. He didn't do everything that he should. And that has been a kind of a consistent thread through Trump's administration. Yes, there are things he could have done better. There are things he did that I think he should get credit for. And history will sort a lot of these out. To me, in not only because I desire a time where we're not talking first and foremost and everything about Donald Trump. Let me focus on, for me, the low light and the highlight of this pandemic. The low light has been other elected officials, the ones who are local elected officials, governors, mayors, who have ordered draconian policies and then not followed them themselves. I'm sure Kenny could echo this, but the mayor of Austin recording a video telling people to not travel and doing so from his daughter's wedding in Cabo is absolutely galling, and is the kind of thing that makes people distrust not only politicians, but other people who are offering more common sense advice. The highlight, the most remarkable thing of all of this is Operation Warp Speed and the development of a vaccine at a scale and speed we've never seen before. The fact they had the vaccine developed on January 13th, ready to be manufactured and shipped to the FDA to go through that bureaucratic process. It is a modern scientific miracle. It is a miracle of human ingenuity. And I hope that that is the thing that we really remember years and decades down the line from this pandemic, how ingenious human beings could be when they were put up against this kind of a challenge.
Jim, would you acknowledge that? Then we're going to go to Kenny. Would you take, tip your cap at least to the things that Eric just spoke about?
Well, absolutely. And he's absolutely correct about the local and state leaders who have been hypocritical on this. Leadership does matter. Operation Warp Speed is a great success story. It's built upon literally decades of research into coronaviruses. And the fact that they were able to build upon that so quickly is an absolute victory here. And to the extent the Trump administration facilitated that, absolutely they should get credit for it.
Kenny, and you acknowledge that your mayor screwed up big time in Austin?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, absolutely, Bruce. And the sentiments are expressed by many of our callers as well. He's really a phony weasel politician in so many respects, but he's not alone. There's the governor of Rhode Island, the governor of California, right? There's others, but certainly Operation Warp Speed, the vaccine. Look, there's 6,000 some testing locations now. I mean, a lot of things happen, and they happened well. They didn't happen soon enough for a lot of people, but clearly having the vaccines done and having multiple vaccines to choose from, and it appears the rollout is going well also. And so I think those are all things that the Trump administration will be remembered for, even with the flaws in communication and so forth.
Yeah, well, with the caveat that there were doses promised to states, and then they were told that that next shipment could be cut back by as much as half. That's a breakdown in communication, a breakdown in logistics that is critical at a time like this. The head of the General Perna, is taking responsibility for it, but that's a kind of screw up that we can't afford to have right now.
But again, Governor Pritzker of Illinois, he spent half the year trashing President Trump at every turn, as did Mayor Lori Lightfoot in Chicago. And I'm wondering, as we head to 2021, who is Governor Pritzker going to blame when those shipments are slow to come to Illinois?
Well, we don't know if they're going to be slow to come to Illinois, though. I mean, they're slow right now, and they're being cut in half right now under the Trump administration. I think
does that mean it's going to turn around quickly?
Has been mostly deserved.
Is it going to turn around quickly in 2021?
I don't have a crystal ball to see the future, but I think we are going to have more people in government who actually understand government and who take the job seriously, as opposed to a lot of anti-government people that the Trump administration has put in that didn't take a lot of time to really care about how well their agencies were operating.
Is there a way, as you look into your crystal ball, Eric, is there a way for you to project who might in the Republican column step forward and have the gonads to challenge Donald Trump for the leadership of the party, or at least control of the dialogue for the next 2 years before Congress is up for re-election again?
There are no shortage of people who will want to be president of the United States. And as a result of that, I don't think we're going to have a real shortage of people who are going to try to distinguish themselves, whether for, in a good way or a bad way.
Who makes the list?
I think we've already seen some of them. Marco Rubio has definitely tried to reestablish himself as leader of the party. I think Tom Cotton is somebody else who is definitely looking at that same kind of track. But for the next 2 years, the most important Republican in the entire country is going to be Mitch McConnell, is going to continue to be Mitch McConnell. You could make an argument that he might have been all along the most important Republican of the last 4 years, because Donald Trump's agenda, Donald Trump's success was Mitch McConnell's success.
Mm-hmm.
So I think McConnell is someone who I have an appreciation for because he's an institutionalist, because he cares about his role within the United States Senate. You can love or hate him, you can like or dislike decisions he makes there, but Mitch McConnell is not angling for the next thing to try to be president of the United States. So for the next 2 years, he's the most important, as a whole bunch of people will probably fall all over themselves to try to emerge as the leader in 2024 for the presidency.
Connie Raymeyer from Texas, how do you, what names do you throw into the hopper, including those that may reside in your state?
Well, there's certainly, I agree with Eric, there's going to be a lengthy list of those who would love to get into the White House and take a run. Senator Ted Cruz among those. I think the one name that sticks out to me right now is somebody that's going to challenge former President Trump at every turn. He's already done that to a certain extent, is Senator Mitt Romney. I think Romney's going to try to go forward again, and he's already, I think, trying to distinguish himself as an anti-Trumper so that he can carry that banner on the campaign trail.
Do you think he would actually throw his hat in the ring and challenge for the Republican nomination again?
Absolutely.
Do you think he'll do that, Eric? Is that realistic?
No, I don't think there's any chance Mitt Romney is running for president of the United States again. Although I want to make another note here on something I think is very important. We have political parties that are about the weakest that they have been in American history. And something that would be within the Republican Party's interest, it would have been the Democratic Party's interest this last time around, is to not have an absolute zoo of a primary in 2024 when they're trying to determine a candidate. I don't know how the party can assert itself. We've weakened them intentionally in a lot of ways. Campaign finance has done that. But the last thing that anybody should really want to see is 16-person primaries happening again.
Do you think that's likely to happen?
Without a strong party to be able to do what parties used to do, which is say, you're going to be the guy, we'll have fewer people should get out. You should consolidate data around more people, pressure people to get out earlier in the process. I'm afraid it's going to happen again. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't happen again, but I'm hopeful that it won't.
But with a large field, Jim Leach, would Donald Trump still prevail in a large field in 2024? I mean, he's not going to go away quietly. We know that.
Yeah, I'm not convinced he's going to run again in 2024. I think it's going to really kind of depend upon the business opportunities that avail themselves in the next couple of years.
How about his son?
I think there is going to be a circus of people looking to out-Trump Trump, which might offer an opening for somebody, I'm not saying he'd be the guy, but somebody like Adam Kinzinger here in Illinois, who was making a claim to become the head of the Sanity Caucus in the Republican Party to try to distance himself from some of the crazy conspiracy theories.
I'll take a bet on that one when we come back. I'm Bruce DuMont. Don't go away. Bruce DuMont back. Thanks very much for joining us. This is our last broadcast of the year. Actually, it's our last 15-minute segment of the year. And thanks to the ever-popular Rando Betker, who gets us on the air and off the air, hopefully on time. If we're off late, it's usually my problem. But again, he's been a great addition to the Beyond the Beltway show this past year as we have switched origination from the Museum of Broadcast Communications to the palatial studios of WCGO in Evanston, Illinois, part of the Smart Talk radio network. And I'm going to go back to at least a couple of our guests can weigh in on this. We have a talk show host from the state capital of Illinois and the state capital of Texas. So, Kenny, my first question to you is, when people are calling into your station or to your show in particular, are they talking mostly about national politics, or are they complaining about state politics and Austin City politics?
You know, Bruce, since our legislature only meets every couple of years, I would say it's been dominated more so by national and certainly local with the antics of our local mayor that we've talked about in previous segments.
One question, we have a guest who is a guest this evening in the first hour, Mike Miller, and whenever he talks about his favorite for 2024, he talks about Dan Crenshaw, your congressman from Texas. What can you tell us about Dan, and What are his presidential aspirations?
I'd have to say he's certainly popular. He's got a popular following here in Austin among the KLBJ listeners.
Mm-hmm.
I would suggest there's a lot of politicians on the short list that might be a little higher up the rung than Dan. Maybe needs more seasoning, maybe needs more time in the barrel. I'm just not sure he's the flash in the pan
right
at this point.
And also, we should mention in Springfield, Illinois, before the break, you mentioned Adam Kinzinger. Jim is someone who people around the country probably know because they see him on TV quite a bit. But you see him as a potential national leader?
Not necessarily. I was really referencing that maybe that he's staking out a place that somebody could perhaps run in a 2024 GOP primary as sort of an anti-Trump figure. Not necessarily him, but he's staking out the right position for that wing of the party that remembers the days before Trump, when it was more about really policy and principle and less about celebrity.
Because he is viewed as a pariah by many of the pro-Trumpers, however, would he even win a Republican primary? I mean, it seems to me that it's been a long time since the Republicans had a real strong candidate for the U.S. Senate, and Tammy Duckworth is going to be up for re-election in 2024. Actually, 2022, correct? She's up in 22, I believe.
Correct, 22, right.
So the question is, he would seem to be, with his national security bona fides, that he would be a viable candidate for that. But would he be able to win a Republican primary, given the fact that the never-Trumpers don't like him?
I think it just really comes down again to what kind of crowd you have there, and can somebody stake out enough of a position apart from the people who are going to try to out-Trump Trump, and there'll be a lot of them in 2022 and 24. But if you have a crowded enough primary and they split the Trumper vote, I think there is a chance for somebody to be able to get enough in a primary to advance.
And your answer to the question, being in Springfield, Illinois, are most of your listeners, are they calling in about state or city politics, or are they calling in about national politics?
This year it's been a lot about the pandemic, about how the state of Illinois has tried to handle these mitigations, some of the tug of war with local officials, the effect on local businesses. Donald Trump is always going to generate calls. He's always going to generate conversation, but it has been a lot of focus on how the pandemic and the economic downturn is impacting the state and our community.
Is Black Lives Matter as an organization and as a movement, is it something that is more in the rear view mirror and will fade away as Donald Trump moves away from the White House? Or is it something you think that's going to have some legs in the Biden White House era? Jim Leach.
Go ahead, Eric.
Jim Leach.
Well, Jim, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jim.
Well, me personally, I think it will still be a presence there. It may unfortunately take another incident as a catalyst to restart that conversation. It has lost a little bit of steam here in the midst of the election and the resurgence of the pandemic, but I don't think it's going away, and I think that there will continue to be conversations about more social justice and equity. Certainly, criminal justice reform here in Illinois, I think, could be a big topic in 2022 once we deal with some of the other pandemic-related issues.
Eric Code?
Unfortunately, I think Jim is right that the relevance of Black Lives Matter, at least the surge of attention around it, is usually hinged on very awful and tragic incidents. And we should all hope and pray that those kinds of incidents don't occur. But, as time proceeds, the inevitability that something like that will happen approaches an inevitability. So no, I don't think it's going away entirely. I would hope, as I hope a lot of our conversations over the next 2 and 4 years are focused a lot more around the actual issues pertaining to them, and a lot less about the president of the United States and their reaction to it. I think the interesting thing with the question that you asked, Bruce, is I would hope that for both of the hosts on here, Jim and Kenny, that they hear far more about local politics than national politics, because national politics should not concern us as much as it does. And we have federalized so many things. We have drawn so much attention up to the national level and further away from where people can have an impact on the outcomes. try to be a hopeful person. I'm hopeful that we focus more attention on state, local politics, and places where people can have an impact on the way their life is actually lived in their own communities.
On that note, we are out of time. Our thanks to Eric Cohen from WYND in Chicago, Jim Leach from WMAY in Springfield, Illinois, and Kenny Romeyer from KLBJ in Austin, Texas. Our thanks to Randall Betcher for his assistance in the production of this program. Thank you very much for being with us all year. This is the last broadcast of 2020, but we will be back here live next Sunday night. See you then. Drive safely.